Hey Process Pros, today we're going to go through how to write a great step note in the step sidebar within Puzzle. Because your diagrams are only as good as they are understood. And depending on how you use your diagrams, you might leave different notes in different steps. For instance, you might be writing notes for yourself for when you build a specific step or part of the process out. Or you might be writing notes for process documentation, where you're trying to list out all of the things that happen in this part of the process so that someone who's reading your documentation can know what to do within the context of the broader process. So today we're going to go through best practices on how to write a great step note for both of those use cases. Let me go ahead and give you a couple of examples. We have this process flow right here, and there's a lot going on, but we're going to be looking at this step right here with Webflow, this form step with Typeform, this step with Clay, and this step with Lemlist. And these 4 steps will be our examples for what a good step note looks like. It really depends on what you're writing the step note for. So let me give you an example here. We have this form within Typeform, which is the demo request form. It's actually the same demo request form that you see on puzzleapp.io's website. And if I come into this sidebar, you can see that I have all of these notes, including a Loom video that's embedded, which is the link that people will get access to watch the demo. So what I want to do here is I just want to walk through this step. You can see that I have an overview section which says when a customer visits the website, which references the step before it, then they'll have the opportunity to fill out this form to get a pre-recorded link. Then I have a section where I embed the actual video itself, and I have a section which is changes that we made to this step probably a couple months ago when we decided to trim down the number of inputs to just 3 so that we could increase conversions and decrease drop-off. Let's go ahead and generalize the framework that I'm using to build out these notes here so that you can replicate it in your flows. So if I come over to this example right here, process documentation step notes, I've pretty much taken the framework that I used in this step and also any of the steps that I'm writing documentation for and boiled it down to its bones here. The structure goes like this. I always use sections to divvy up information so that when people open the sidebar, it's not just a wall of text, right? They understand that there are sections that they can look at for different pieces of information in the step sidebar. The second thing that I do is I always reference the step before it. So I say when previous step happens, then roll system does X, Y, and Z. The reason why mentioning the previous step is helpful is because you can imagine that someone's coming through this process and they're clicking on each one of these steps and they're digesting this piece of information in isolation. But then once they're done, they're going to come over here and start to read the next step here. And so it's just helpful to bridge the gap when you reference the previous steps. Or those are the first couple best practices. Some other best practices is when you say then, you mention the role that's responsible or the system that does the job. Now, if it's a manual step, you'll mention the role that's responsible for the step, or if it's automated or an AI agent, you'll reference the system that does the actual action. And then finally, I always put so that we can achieve, and you don't have to put 3 reasons. You could just put 1 sentence of what it helps you achieve and why you built it that way. Okay, and then the last best practice is to always put useful links. Now, there are times when there are no useful links, so I will just put down here, I'll still put the section, and I'll put non-applicable. But oftentimes there is some artifact, a form, a website, a help article, an SOP that you can link out to as a reference. So you can see here, I just link out to google.com. So let's go back to this step. Actually, let's go to the Clay step and see what this looks like in action again. Okay, so we have this overview and it says, when a person fills out the watch a demo, the step before it, they are automatically submitted to a Clay table using Typeform's native integration with Clay. Clay will enrich the contact using their email, find their LinkedIn, The purpose of this step is to keep connected with folks who are interested in Puzzle and nurture them with content on LinkedIn. And I have a useful link to, you guessed it, the Clay table that holds all of this data. So that is a perfectly written step note. Because if anyone came in here and clicked on just this step and read what happens here, they would have all of the information to generally understand, maybe not from like a technical standpoint, how the Clay table was actually configured, but at a high level, they'll understand exactly what this part of the process does so that they can move on and read the next step. So that is the first use case, which is when you're trying to document for process documentation, where someone's reading through here and just trying to get a gist for what happens in each one of these process steps. Now let's assume that the notes are just for you, and you're trying to leave notes for what you want to build in the process, as opposed to trying to convey how that part of the process works to someone else. And although they seem similar, they're slightly different. I always find myself, when I am building a step and I don't yet have it fully documented, and I frankly don't have it 100% clear how it's going to work in the system, I put the first section here as build notes. And I say something along the lines of, we're aiming to build X, Y, and Z so that we can achieve A, B, and C. Oftentimes I'll input what fields I will need to reference, or ideas about how I might build the complex zap, or the form, or the trade-offs that we might be considering using one system or another system, all of the details and notes that go into building whatever you're trying to build. And then similarly, I will always put a useful link section and link out to the useful documentation. So that's the best practice for build notes. I don't think let's see actually. Let's click on this. This is risky. Okay, so this is a good example. I am ideating putting a welcome email that goes out to folks who request the demo. Now they get contacted in other ways through a sequence whenever they request the demo. However, I wanted a welcome email that just welcomes them to the puzzle community. You can see I don't use build notes, but I probably should have. And I use the same structure. When a lead is created and it's tagged watch request demo, then it will enroll in the contact. And I actually already have this email completely written out in my step, so that when I'm ready to go ahead and build this part of the process, it's so easy. I just go to intercom, I build a workflow, I make it trigger when a lead is created and they haven't been through this flow before, and I put this in the email and I test it out and go live. So that's an example of a build note where you might not know exactly how it needs to be documented after the fact, but you're just trying to put all of the information in there for when you are ready to build it. So those are the best practices for writing great step notes. If you have anything to add, please post them right here below. Thanks.